G'day everyone and welcome back to Club Grubbery. It's been a little while. Johnny, we've been missing in action.
We have, Hoody, but it's been a lot happening. We're sort of like the Blues Brothers getting the band back together, I suppose.
Yeah, look, I've been over in the West where I caught up with our guest tonight, Rebecca Barnett. Rebecca's a wonderful freelance investigative journalist. And mate, it's a lost art, but she's reviving it. She and Alison Beveridge and a couple of others are just doing a great job. Rebecca, thanks for joining us.
It was so good to bump into you the other night. We were at the AMPS event, and I thought, I know who that is, but we'd never actually crossed paths in person. So that was nice.
No, I admired your work for a long time, so it was good to catch up. Of course, we're going to be discussing the Port Hedland Council at greater length because TGA have come out very quickly.
Mm.
Rebuke the claims made. Is that the word?
They called it misinformation. Well, it's funny. Media use the word debunk, but I don't think they know what that means, because if you want to debunk something, you have to prove that it's false. But of course, the TGA doesn't tend to do that. They tend to deny. So, I like to recall that Bill Clinton denied having sexual relations with that woman. Didn't mean it wasn't true. So,
Yeah.
Authorities deny things all the time. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in if they can prove what they're saying is true.
Now let's go back into a little bit of what you've been doing, Rebecca, because you're a master of the art of freedom of information. You've done
You
an
have
awful
to
lot of
be
that.
if you want to get any information in Australia, I'm afraid.
You certainly do, and I can say that you were involved in the freedom of information requests that brought about the challenge in Port Hedland and
Yeah.
other issues as well. You've been at the forefront of this since day one, producing some great material. You back it up. You don't put anything out there that you can't back up with thorough research.
Mm.
And we can unpack the government and media response to what happened in Port Hedland, but go through that FOI document, which was largely redacted except for one paragraph, which was,
We
I'm
needed
sure
to know.
somebody's going to get their butt kicked for not redacting that. Tell us about that.
Totally. I actually had been sitting on it because I was hoping to just keep it quiet until they released the Pfizer one to me. So I'll just tell people what I requested. The TGA has been dismissing. I've sent them several of the scientists' work finding the high levels of contamination, DNA contamination in the modified RNA shots. The lawyer on the GMO case, which I imagine you've covered, that's challenging the regulatory status of the modified RNA shots. Those lawyers also sent David Speaker's latest Australian study. So we know the TGA's got all this information. What they tend to do is then reply back and say, oh, that's just not done according to the right protocol. Okay, so the obvious question is, what's the right protocol? What protocol do you want to be used? Well, they don't provide that information. It's not online anywhere. So you've got to do it. You've got to request it under FOI. So I requested so there's two ways that DNA is tested that the regulator approves of. One is by the manufacturer themselves, and one is by the TGA. They had said, oh, we do independent testing up until last Friday when they issued that statement. They had actually never, to the best of my knowledge, said how many batches that they had independently tested. They'd always been very hazy and evasive about it, which is weird. I just think, well, if you've tested 27 batches, why don't you just say so? Which kind of makes me wonder, when did you test the 27? After we all gave you hell about it, or a long time ago? And if you did it a long time ago, why didn't you just say so? But anyway, that's that. What I requested was the protocols that Moderna and Pfizer use to measure the residual DNA, because for most of the batches, the TGA says, we'll approve the protocol, then you show us the results and we'll stamp it. So we wanted to know, okay, well, what is the protocol that you like? Because they don't like the fluorometry testing. They don't like the way it's been done with qPCR. So the two methods that the scientists are using to measure this DNA, and we can get into this more afterwards, the difference between them if you're interested. One's fluorometry, one's qPCR, like PCR, like how they tested us for the COVID virus, the SARS-CoV-2 virus. So I requested the protocols. They gave me the Moderna one, but there was they had to consult on the Pfizer one before they could release it, which gave a 30-day lag. I had tried to keep the Moderna one quiet because I didn't want them to get a heads up of what to redact in the next one, but someone saw it and publicized it, and good on them for monitoring the logs. So anyway, that was out there, and I had sent it to all the scientists to say, okay, well, this is the approved method. And to paraphrase, it proved a criticism of the PCR method correct. So several scientists had criticized the PCR method for targeting just one part of the plasmid. And I'm going to do this in the layest of terms possible. Targeting one part of the plasmid, let's say it's only looking at 1% of the plasmid, and then extrapolating mathematically out from there to say, well, we think this much DNA is in the vials based on this tiny measurement of this tiny bit. The criticism of that is that if you're only measuring an area where not a lot of DNA is going to show up, and you're not maybe getting the smallest fragments, which, from a contamination issue, from a contamination perspective, especially with the SV40 enhancer promoter, which I imagine that your audience might be familiar with, in the Pfizer vaccine only, not in Moderna, the size of the fragments is not necessarily particularly relevant to the risk. In fact, small fragments might pose more of a risk. Some scientists say. So that is to say that particular method, and this was evidenced in the way that Moderna is testing their product, is likely to drastically underestimate the amount of DNA in the vials, which is why these scientists like McKernan, Speaker, Koenig, and Buchholz in South Carolina. I think Buchholz just used qPCR to the best of my knowledge, but the others have also used a method called fluorometry, which they say is a more accurate reading because it measures all the DNA, not just a part, and then extrapolating.
Wow.
So essentially with that FOI, it was able to confirm what the scientists had surmised to be the case.
It's very interesting, John. As you know, and Rebecca, I've spent the last almost 3 weeks in WA, and I spent most of that time with Adrian McRae, and
cool.
we were sharing the same place. He graciously gave us a bedroom to stay in while we were over there, and we were sort of eating meals with him, and living as housemates together. And I can tell you the amount of research and the amount of pushback that he's had, and also the amount of international attendance to what he's been able to pull off with the help of Rebecca and Jill and others, has been nothing short of inspirational. This guy is completely all over this. He's not some flippant sort of a fly-by-nighter that just pops up and says something. This guy does nothing without he backs it 100%. And he's doing that. And I can tell you that the responses, in particular from Roger Cook, the WA Premier, were so childish. I'm going to be a bit crude, Johnny. This guy has been caught with his pants down. He's like a kid was caught with his pants down, and that's the way he's reacting, which proves to everybody that he's not happy Jan. He's got something to hide. Now, I did try to get an interview on 6PR with Jeff Adsett. They said they
Gary Adshead.
Gary Adshead, sorry. They said
so he's the guy who incorrectly called the virologist David Speaker a vet because he misread. David's lab is attached to a veterinary college, and I guess he just didn't read the document, or David's CV or any of the report. Exactly. So yeah, a veterinary doctor. Whatever.
One of the questions I was going to ask. And we'll go through some of these as we go on. I'm sure John would have some too, given that you're a councillor with Snowy Valley Council, John, and waiting to receive an email. The one question I would want to ask the Premier of WA is, if there was any notion, as remote as it might be, that some entity was interfering with your DNA, would you want to know about it? Because really, that's the essence of what we're getting at. It's not about, these guys are crooks and these guys are corrupt and everything. Would you want to examine all possibilities as to whether this is true or not, or are you just going to fob it off as misinformation? Because I'm sure all of our listeners and you guys would agree. I know that someone's trying to fiddle with my DNA, and I want to know all about it because I want to know how to protect myself. What are your thoughts, John? You're waiting to get this email. You've had contact with several councillors who are hearing about this, who are worrying about it. Why is the Premier of WA doing what he's doing and playing the game this way?
Well, I think, Hoodie, the fact is that this guy was also the health minister during this debacle. So there is certainly, look, there's foul play here. I'm not suggesting that all these people are crooks and criminals, but some of them definitely are. There is no doubt about it. I mean, Senator Gerard Rennick has essentially called the TGA liars. He said that their statement on this is full of lies, and you would have to agree. Why do they not just want to get some independent people to look at it? I mean, pick three companies randomly and just say, look, have a look at this, report back to us. I mean, it's in everyone's safety and interest to do that. Why you would be reacting this way is absolutely ridiculous. If mistakes have been made, if lies have been told by the companies and the bureaucrats have accepted that, well, look, we have to deal with it. They should have been more robust in their governance, but look, they haven't been. We know that now. But, we need to protect our future generations from this debacle that's going on. And I think that's why what Adrian has done in Port Hedland is so essential, because this is a wake-up call now. This is an opportunity to at a grassroots level, involve the councils, because people will say, look, it's not the remit of the councils, and look, it may not be the remit of the councils, but look, do councils go into cafes to do health and safety inspections? Yes, they do. Yes, they do. 100% they do. So it's hard to believe that if you're going to allow councils to put fluoride in water, and they're responsible for the safe administration of fluoride in water. I mean, how safe is that? I mean, I'm asking the question of Snowy Valleys now about whether this is a safe process as well, given that it's now been advised that this is a neurotoxin. Here's another argument that will come up amongst local councils, because look, ultimately they are the authority that deals with this stuff. So it's not out of our remit to be looking at what's in these mRNA vaccines, because the councils participate in so many health things. They've got people on local health boards. They interact with GPs through primary health networks that are set up with the federal government. There are so many tentacles that come into local government where they have a role to play in health. So it's really disingenuous to suggest that it's not up to them. And I think asking the councils to put everyone on notice and ask the questions that everyone else has been asking, to get it out in the public sphere is something that is desirable, because everyone needs to know what's going on.
Can I just add on the Port Hedland thing? You know who they interviewed in all the media to talk about the decision? The mayor. Who's the mayor? A guy who owns a photo shop. So good for him. Does he have any medical or scientific expertise? No. Who's the only person who does have scientific or medical expertise on the council? A nurse called Lorraine Butson. She's a councillor. She voted for the motion. Did any of the media reach out to the only medically, scientifically qualified person on the council? No. They just got the mayor on to call them, quote, a box of bloody Fruit Loops. Like, that's how he spoke about his own colleagues. And then he essentially disenfranchised all the constituents who turned up to this open meeting. Anyone could have come if you're for it or against it. It was an open meeting. The only people who felt strongly enough to come were approximately, apparently, 50 people. And I heard many of them speak, giving statements for over 45 minutes before the councillors gave their addresses. And the primary theme that I would say that I picked up from it was that these people feel disenfranchised, that the federal government and its agencies are not doing their job. The state government bullied them. I listened to one elderly Indigenous man say that he felt that the state government, and Mark McGowan specifically, had treated him and his community like cattle and bullied them. So they don't have anywhere else to go. The local council is their last line of representation to ask, will you please represent our interests, because no one else will. And there was one councillor, Sven Arentz, I think, who was on the fence, and he, after listening to everyone and hearing the science from Professor Angus Dalgleish, eminent oncologist, and reading the report and so on by qualified scientists, said that he decided to vote for the motion because he felt it was the right thing to do. And I think that that's really what it comes down to for me as an outsider looking in. It seems that the people are saying, no one, when these layers of government aren't doing their job, you're all we can go to. Will you please step up? And it's not like they're asking a big thing. They're asking, stop the shots till we can investigate this thing properly. Shouldn't we do that? It's not a big ask.
It beholds every elected representative of any form of government in this country to stand and do what the Port Hedland Shire councillors have done. If other tiers of government are letting them down, you can't divorce local government from any other area. Like if I once picked up a salmonella bug in a hamburger I got in a Melbourne suburb near where I lived, and it nearly knocked me off. I tell you what, it was really bad. Now, the first people to investigate that were the Essendon Shire Council.
Right.
They found out about it. They went in. They sent their health department in to investigate the shop where it was purchased from, and they actually traced it back to a small goods supplier in Melbourne that had nothing to do with the shop. The shop was spotless, but there was something in the transport that caused the issue. The council discovered that, Johnny. The health department of the council discovered that. The other thing about the Mayor Carter of Port Hedland, he's not a man who's bathed in glory. He has a very, very dubious character record. Look, I said in an interview the other day that, I believe life is a journey of character development, and I cannot wait for the WA Premier and the Port Hedland Mayor to actually start that journey, John.
Yeah.
Because clearly they're in a bad way. Before we go,
well, look, everything's done to stifle these people, Hoodie. I mean, there is memorandums of understanding, there is protocols, there is codes of conduct which prohibit other councillors from speaking to the media. This is all been layered to effectively stifle these moments and allow these buffoons like this idiot at Port Hedland as the mayor to hold court. Now, ultimately, every one of those councillors should be allowed to be interviewed by the media, and I mean, it wouldn't stop me, I can tell you. I'd just tell them to get stuffed. That's what everyone should be doing. They can't tell you what to do. I mean, just tell the truth. That's all we're asking. We're not.
See, that'd be refreshing.
Yeah.
Well, it would be.
Now, Rebecca, I want you to take yourself to a fantasy world now. I want you to pretend that you're a top-class journalist with one of the big tabloids, or perhaps with one of the mainstream media TV outlets, and you heard that some evidence had been uncovered that there may be something wrong with the jab, and it was uncovered in Port Hedland. What would be your first response to that? How would you play that story?
Well, the problem is, if I worked for a big corporation, I'd be on such a tight deadline, I wouldn't probably have time to do the job properly, because we know that what they do is collect, with the exception of some very good investigative reporting that is done on occasion. Like, I know that The Age and the Sydney Morning Herald actually does some really good work. So I don't want to undermine that, but I would say that that's the exception, not the rule. So for everyday stuff, generally speaking, what are they doing? Collating a couple of press releases and pumping it out because of the 24-hour news cycle. So if I were on one of those teams that had the budget to do some investigative work, obviously, budget warranting, you'd go there and talk to people. So I did the next best thing, which was calling up the councillors and actually listening to also what the public had to say in their statements. And I have to say that town is so rich with stories. I hope someone does a documentary one day. But, I think there is a bit of a lost art in journalism at the moment of just talking to people. It's almost like people are sitting, the professionals, the laptop professionals are sitting in their office doing desktop research, and you can get a certain amount from that. But you miss a lot. You just miss a lot that you can't get unless you talk to people who were there.
The thing that really got me, Rebecca, was that instead of a news organisation going to, hang on, somebody's found something that could be in the vaccine that we should be alarmed about, they went straight to banners which were basically saying council should stick to footpaths and rubbish collection.
Yeah. The other thing ideally you would do is read the accompanying documentation. But again, unless you're assigned specifically to an investigative project, that they don't have time to, it takes days to read all of that, to read all of the reports, to listen to the entire meeting. It was a 2.5 or something hour meeting. It's just not built into the framework of the day, unfortunately.
It is. Well, look, at the end of the day, I mean, this is what I just cannot understand. It's a chain of responsibility. It doesn't matter whether this has nothing to do with council. I mean, at the end of the day, if they've become aware that there's an occupational health and safety risk, if there's an identified or perceived risk, they've got a duty to investigate it. I mean,
and if they're not going to, the very least they could do is be more accurate in the way that they address things. So, for example, they said that these claims have been debunked. They haven't been debunked. They've been denied. So, that's there's a big difference between those two things. I have no problem with media reporting that the TGA denies it, but they can't say it's been debunked. It's ridiculous. And they also leaned heavily into the Russia thing with Adrian. So, he actually hasn't been to Russia since he's been a councillor. He went one time as a scrutineer. He has a history of scrutineering as community service. It's got nothing to do with anything. A couple of media commentators, and Roger Cook even said something like, oh, they've got councillors going off to Russia. No, they don't. They've never had a councillor go to Russia. No person while on the council went to Russia. So that's just not true. And then another, Gary Adshead, the one who called the virologist a vet, he was making statements like, oh, they're just, what's this council just talking about? Russia stuff and anti-vax stuff. The only time that I know of that the council has ever discussed Russia was when the mayor made a massive deal out of it and brought a motion of no confidence against Adrian having gone one time to scrutineer and made it a motion and made it council business, and everyone had to vote on the mayor's motion. Oh, we should kick Adrian off because we should have a vote of no confidence, because he went to Russia that one time. He's the only one that made anything about Russia even come up in the council, and yet the media are reporting it as though Adrian's just commandeering council meetings to talk about Vladimir Putin.
I know. It's bizarre.
Yeah, it's ludicrous.
It's ludicrous. And I'll tell you what, if I was asked to go to scrutinise an election in Russia or China or anyone else, I'd jump at the chance.
It'd be quite an experience.
Why wouldn't you go and investigate and look? And the reason why, Rebecca, is because we get fed so much bullshit by our governments and the media, we don't know who to trust anymore. If you go to Russia, then you can have a good look at what's going on over there for yourself, make your own mind up. Because I don't believe anything that comes out of our Foreign Affairs Department. I don't believe anything that comes out of our mainstream media. For goodness sake, we should be taking opportunities. And for Penny Wong to come out and condemn him like he's some kind of a traitor, I mean, that to me, Johnny, look, for goodness sake.
I would have thought the Russian people might be grateful for international independent people coming to scrutiny their elections.
Well, according to Adrian, they were very grateful and they did a very good job of it. And he gave evidence that they did a very good job. Now, if I were Penny Wong, I would have been calling Adrian McRae to Canberra to sit down and listen to his findings. What did he find
Yeah.
out?
Yeah. Interview him.
Well, it's funny, isn't it? You know, I mean, I don't know how many Russians I've spoken to over the years, and you ask them the question about Putin, and they all say, the ones in Australia, they all say that he's great. He's a wonderful leader. I mean, you ask any Australian about Anthony Albanese.
Yeah. I mean, I just don't see how Adrian's opinions on Vladimir Putin are relevant to the Port Hedland Council issue. Like I just don't see how it's relevant, whether you agree with him or not, or what has that got to do with anything?
What has it got to do with it? And probably we shouldn't spend any more time giving it any breadth than it needs. But look, the whole situation is clearly collapsing around them. There's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. I know our Stuart Robertson, who does the IT for us at Club Grubbery, is heavily involved in organising email lists. There are 6,000 email recipients that are going to be getting this document. The work going on behind the scenes, I've had a couple of critical emails from people who seem to know everything but don't, and they're saying, you know, when are you guys going to act on this information that's come out of Port Hedland? Rebecca, this is a massive task, and there are a lot of people involved in it. Am I right? Is anyone dropping the ball on this?
No. I don't know. Well, yeah. So just if people are wondering what the process looks like, first of all, the CEO has been tasked with sending all these emails and letters, but there's a group of volunteers. So no one's getting paid for this, to the best of my knowledge. But there's a group of volunteers who are, in case it doesn't go through, like in case there's pushback in terms of actioning what the CEO is supposed to do, basically every single councillor's email address, so not just the CEO of the council, but the individual councillors, because the thinking is, well, what if the CEO gatekeeps that information? So they want it to go to every individual person who represents the people on a local government level. So that's, as you say, over 6,000 addresses, I think. They have to be found, put in a spreadsheet, and then that's got to be coordinated. You know, you can't just sit on your Gmail and just send it to 6,000 people. Like, these things have to be coordinated. So it's a really big task. Takes a few days to do, for sure. So in the background, another thing that's happening is a website has been built, which I don't know if anyone's ever contracted a website build, but I can tell you they never happen in days. They usually take 6 to 12 months in my experience. So that's an incredibly fast turnaround. So that website has to be populated with the details of the motion, the science, and what people can do if they want to raise this issue at their council. So when that website's up, which I believe is going up later today, if not tomorrow, I will send you that link so that you can share that with your audience. So yeah, there's a lot happening in the background. You know, there's the image of the duck on the water. There's a lot of paddling going on. It's a big effort.
It is a big effort, and I've, as I said, I've been in the middle of it, sort of kind of in the middle of it all with Adrian, and I can tell you the phone never stops.
Yeah.
Got much sleep there at his place. The phone never stops, and people are getting this done. Now, I understand that emails have gone off to all the councillors in Tasmania. I believe they've all received theirs.
Okay.
This is a gradual process. It's continuing. We're not letting up on it, and I believe it's had something like 40 million views around the world.
Wow. As in the video?
The video, yeah. But it's had 40 million odd responses. So this has really put Australia in the spotlight. And the way the governments react and the media reacts to this is critical to us internationally.
Well, not only that, but our councillors, Hoody. I mean, I'll just read you something quickly that came across my desk. This was an email that was sent to a councillor in Randwick. Read pending letter on halt to dangerous mRNA genetic products. Randwick Council action requested. This is her response. Dear sir, thank you for your email. I've kept the name out. I note your concerns about the use of mRNA vaccines. These vaccines are approved for use in Australia through the stringent processes of the federal government's Therapeutic Goods Administration, advised independently by the Australian Technical Advisory Group on Immunisation. Randwick City Council does not provide vaccination services. I will not be representing your concerns to Council as they are better addressed to state and federal governments. Kind regards, Claire Willington, Councillor for North Ward, Randwick City.
Good on you,
So
Claire.
there's a couple. Yeah, well, Claire, I've got news for you. I'm actually working at the moment. So this is another thing in the background. Those of us who do more of the research-based stuff have been responding to the TGA's statement that all of this is misinformation and everything's rigorously tested and it's all safe and effective. I've been working on a blow-by-blow response to their claims. It's Tuesday. I'm still going. It's a behemoth because they've made a lot of claims. So I'm going to be addressing every single one of them because, we need a document that people can go to where it's all there, if you know what I mean. And, the TGA says, oh, it's all tickety-boo. Well, of course, anyone who's been paying attention knows that there was never an RCT on the product that's being administered. And the reason that there's high levels of DNA in the product that's being administered, the Pfizer product I'm talking about, is because they switched the process. So I'm talking about the bait and switch here, where the RCT, the randomized control trials, was on the product that was made with a very high quality in vitro transcription process. That was the product that they gave to everyone. After the RCT, I think they tested the process 2 product, which is in the big vat with the DNA plasmids, replicating in E. coli bacteria. And then they get the mRNA from that. And then they've got to rinse out or filter out all the DNA. Well, that process is the reason all the residual DNA is in there. And that product was only tested on around 250 people in the trials. Everyone else in the trials got the other product. So the TGA doesn't appear to have clocked that at all. And I could go on about all the other ways in which they're not really up to scratch. But the other thing I'll say is that the ATAGI, which I believe was referenced, that advises on the suitability of vaccines and who should have one and all of that, I actually emailed the TGA and via them ATAGI about this IgG4 issue, which you may know about, the class switch, where the more vaccines people get, the more they seem to be tolerating the virus and not able to clear it. And so just getting sicker for longer and more prone actually to keeping on catching it. And off the back of a new study that was published in the last month, yet another IgG4 finding. We've had many now, so it's really been replicated over the past 12 or so months. I emailed the TGA and I specifically asked ATAGI, will you be adjusting your recommendations to allow for the fact of immune suppression that is now being documented in this IgG4 class switch. And they did not, they sent me back a boilerplate response saying, oh, we consider all the science as it comes through. And if we ever need to update anyone, we will. So they're not across it. They're really not across it.
Claire, you are an elected representative of the people. If a hospital or a school was about to be built on a toxic dump site in your council, would you have a responsibility to raise that as an issue, Claire? Would you? Or would you say, no, that's federal or state? You're an elected representative and you need to represent the people. And there'll be lots of people in the Randwick Shire who are getting across this and who aren't happy. And I tell you what, if your council mandated employees to have this mRNA jab, then you really need to pay more attention, my dear, because you have a responsibility as an elected representative. Johnny?
Well, and goes on, Sutherland Shire Council, they sacked Jazz, the employee there.
They sacked her.
Sacked her.
Who's that? Who's Jazz? What happened?
Well, poor Jazz was a long-term employee of Sutherland Shire Council, and she was off for various reasons because she didn't want the vaccine, and she ended up coming back into the workplace, and they essentially made her they ostracized her and made her wear a mask and the rest of it, and then they basically ordered that she have a medical review, and it was ordered from the CEO and the mayor for her to have this intervention as to why she held these beliefs about the vaccine, and why
she reads scientific studies
and why she couldn't have it. And essentially she said, no, I'm not having a medical review, and they sacked her.
Wow. You'd think that would be covered under anti-discrimination law, but of course only certain attributes are protected.
Nothing's covered. Look, the Industrial Relations Commission and all these other jurisdictions are a disgrace. They're just politicised. I mean, we were in the Industrial Relations Appeal Court this week, and even though in Caitlin's matter, my wife, it was found by the commissioner that she was unjustly sacked. That they were the words, that on the grounds she was unjustly sacked. At the appeal court, that they were arguing about the definition of unjust, and they said that it was only a little bit unjust, like a little bit pregnant. I don't know. What hope have you got?
Yeah.
Johnny, I think you described it as trying to win the Melbourne Cup riding a Shetland pony. That's got to be the quote of the year. That's got to be the quote of the year. So, all right. So here we are. The race has started. The gates are open. The horses are running down the straight, and there's a lot of work being done, and it's going to be relentless, and we have to keep the pressure on. That means you, our viewers, have to share this stuff. Now, to inspire our viewers about the legitimacy of the TGA, Rebecca, can you confirm that they are 95% funded by Big Pharma?
Yeah, 96. Marianne DeMasi did a investigation for the BMJ and came up with 96% funded, although Alex Antic brought that up in Senate estimates once, and I think it was Tony Lawler, the one who's currently the head, said, oh, no, it's not that much. I'll get back to you on how much. Well, I posted that, and someone had been in contact with them very recently and forwarded me an email from the TGA saying we're 94% funded. So they were quibbling over 2% apparently. So it's somewhere in the area of 94 to 96%. And what was interesting about that from Marianne's investigation was that the TGA was actually the most funded by pharma in the world out of all the regulators. Others were like 75, 80, 85.
Yep, that's true. Australia has the most funding of its TGA by any other department by pharma in the world. That is so true.
No wonder we're building Moderna factories.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The other thing that came out of that investigation was that the TGA had approved in the period that was studied 9 out of 10 drugs that were put to it. So very high approval rate.
Now, we're also happy to announce that we will be interviewing the scientists who found the DNA contaminants, and that's Dr. David Speaker will be speaking with us. We're just arranging times now. We're going to keep pumping this stuff out. Look, there's so much corruption, and people have a right to ask the question. I'm going to raise again the issue around Infected Bloods Australia. Charles Mackenzie and those beautiful people who've been fighting for justice for 30 years are caught up in the same medical tyranny that we've been caught up in. We now know what it's like. They need our support, and we're going to keep pushing that issue and continue to push it. We have interviewed Charles, and we've interviewed Tony David, a world champion darts player who is affected by this, and trying to get Tony back on again, because there's more information coming to light. They're having a big event on the 29th of October, I believe, in Melbourne, where they'll be challenging various corrupted officials. And the police have been notified that that action is going to be sought by these individuals. And people in the UK have faced jail time because of their corruption around this. And that was over 30 years ago. Also, we've had someone contact us from the pelvic mesh people, John. Give us a bit of update on that.
Yeah, the head organizer of the pelvic mesh that's got the 1,400 applicants in there that are still waiting for outcomes, Hoodie, that you've raised on Club Grubbery previously. So, yeah, she's emailed us. So we're going to get in contact with her and hopefully get her on Club Grubbery to tell her story. She was at Epic, from what I understand, and was badly affected by this pelvic mesh situation. So it's there's bad stuff happening everywhere, and then just to top it all off, we've got this grub down in Victoria, Daniel the Statue Andrews. He's been appointed as the chairperson of a mental health organisation at 700,000 a year, I'm told.
A man who did more to harm mental health in Australia than anyone else, and Anne Shearman is pushing very hard in Victoria to have that brought to public attention. She's been on our program before, and she'll be coming back on again any day now to discuss Daniel Andrews' new role. I mean, it's great, John, isn't it? You go out there and you make a mess, and then you cop the profit for trying to put it right. And talk about having the wolf in charge of the flock. Goodness.
Well, it's just getting more and more Banana Republic every day, isn't it? I mean, if you can't, when Mark McGowan and Dan Andrews got given the Companion of the Order of Australia, it just felt like they're getting medals for having shown up for work, essentially, because they didn't achieve the thing, that it said services to public health, but like, where's the evidence that anything was better because of anything that they did? There isn't any.
Well, let me give you a tip, Daniel. You've made enough out of public life. I would have thought that it would have been a very selfless act to actually donate your time to an organisation like that is doing great things for the community. I mean, beyond belief that you're now going to make them part way with the better part of 1.4 million over 2 years, if that's the case, which will be diverted away from urgent needs in the community for many people who are suffering from mental illness. You should be absolutely ashamed of yourself. That is one of the most dreadful, heinous, inappropriate appointments that I think I could ever dream up. And the fact that you're comfortable with taking money from those people who desperately need it is beyond belief. You've made enough money in public life now. Pee off.
Absolutely, and I think it would be a greater public service if he denied the position offered to him on the grounds that he caused the dramas in the first place. Right. I mean, we've seen enough messaging from people in the last 3 or 4 years to back up just how desperate their situations were because of this clown. We're surrounded by him, Rebecca. Any more comments you'd like to make on the Port Hedland matter before we leave it there?
Oh, I would just really urge anyone who hasn't already to listen to the video of the meeting, which I don't know if you've disseminated it. I've included it in my Substack coverage of the council. It was really moving to hear the residents speak about why this was important to them, which I think is actually at the heart of the issue, is that local government's there to represent the people and they have not been heard. And so I just felt it felt like quite meaningful to actually listen to them.
That's a great idea.
And of course, and I would also, of course, recommend checking the website, which I will send to you when it goes up, if people are interested in taking action themselves, taking the matter to their council.
Absolutely, that's a must. We've got to do this. We've been saying for a long time, it all happens at the grassroots in the local council, Johnny.
100%, Hoodie. And look, everyone's got to do what this gentleman did with Claire, whatever her name was, Willington or whatever, down at Randwick Council, right, to these people. Put them on notice, CC everyone else in the email so that they can't get out of it, because they love a rock to hide under these people. They don't want to do anything that's going to create conflict. So put them out on show so that we know what they're up to. And I mean, go down to your local radio station. Give them the voiceover from Professor Angus Dalgleish, which is from the Port Hedland's council meeting. That if that got played on every local community radio station, this would go a long way to ending all this madness. Because I mean, he's one of the most impressive people I think we've come across in this whole journey. Him and Dr. Paul Merrick. I mean, they were unbelievable, Hoodie, weren't they?
They were, and I mean the fact that SV40 fragments were found in the in that contamination is frightening for people like Angus Dalgleish and Paul Marrick, because they know that that is incredibly carcinogenic stuff. That's the foundation on which cancers are formed, and that there's a possibility that that might be injected into us needs further scrutiny at the highest level.
Well, it's not a possibility. It's definitely getting injected into people. The regulators have admitted that it is there. But the appalling thing about that was it took Kevin McKernan finding it for it to come to light. And you are probably aware that it turns out that we know that Health Canada at least had no idea it was there. So they'd approved this thing. Pfizer had sent them the plasmid map, but they'd removed the annotation of SV40. So they could legally say, oh, it was on the map, but they removed the annotation. So it didn't get picked up. And Health Canada didn't even know about it until McKernan made it public. And the TGA, we don't know, but given their performance, I can't imagine they're doing any better than Health Canada on that.
Well, one of the telling things from that video of the council meeting, Rebecca, was Adrian McRae, who runs a mining construction business as one of his enterprises in Port Hedland, is currently constructing a cold room for bodies.
Yeah.
He's been contracted to build a cold room for cadavers, and he inquired of the local mortician as to why they need this extra space, and he was told that we've gone from one funeral a week to one funeral a day. Now, if that doesn't at least get you wondering and getting you to think, well, maybe councils should be doing more than just knitting, which they don't. Oh, another great thing out of this is all the councils and the media now rushing out to tell us, oh, no, councils only do garbage, footpaths and rate collection. Great. So we can expect that libraries will be shut down to the social engineering that they're doing in there, that certain books will be removed. That maybe you don't have to have a license to plant a rose bush in your front garden, and maybe a whole bunch of other stuff that council imparts on all of its ratepayers. Maybe they'll pull back now and do what they think they're going to do, or are they going to step up and do what they're really meant to do, and that is represent their constituents? It's a wide open field, Rebecca.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see where it goes.
Yes, well, fascinating to have you on. Now, we always close with a prayer. Are you happy with that?
Sure.
I think it'll be one you like. Dear Lord, please grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference, living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace, and taking as Jesus did this sinful world as it is and not as we would have it, and trusting that you will make all things right if we surrender to your will, so that we can be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with you forever in the next, is our prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Johnny, you've often been heard to say,
you just couldn't make this stuff up.
You couldn't make this stuff up. And I tell you, I just had a message from Phil Altman, Dr. Philip Altman, unpacking the entire saga around Port Hedland, is going to give us a brief on that. And we'd love to get you back on in a panel, perhaps with Philip and Alison Beveridge.
Yeah, great.
What do you think?
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be more updates, imminently.
All right, well, let's look at that maybe next week or the week after, because we've got to keep the pressure on. Don't forget, everyone, if you love somebody and you haven't told them, for goodness sake, get out there and tell them. We've got a whole lineup of interviews this week. We apologise for not being on air much in the last couple of weeks, but we're going to come back all guns blazing, Johnny.
All guns blazing.
All guns blazing. So on behalf of all of our viewers, Rebecca Barnett, thank you for your tireless work. Thank you for your courage, and thank you for your intellect. And we look forward to reaping the benefits of that as time goes on. No pressure.
I'll do my best.
Good on you, girl. Okay, thanks everybody for watching Club Grubbery. We'll be back tomorrow night or the night after with another great interview. God bless you and bye for now.